is Katie with Vintage and Vinyl, back with another great video for you today. And in this video, I'm thrilled to be finally sharing the rest of my Record Store Day Black Friday 2020 pickups. This is an all big thanks to Jack over at Trax Records. He knew that Little Richard, Southern Child, was high on my list, and it was a tough one to find at only 1,800 copies released. So he was able to get one in his area and send it over. So Jack, thank you so much. I am enjoying listening to Little Richard, Southern Child. It's just such a different Little Richard album, and it's fun to hear. So thank you so much. And guys, if you are not subscribed to Jack at Trax Records, please go subscribe. I will link his channel down below. He has some fabulous content. Okay, so before we get into the specifics of this album, I want to talk a little bit about the history of Little Richard and his upbringing, because I think that really heavily influences this album. This album is titled Little Richard, Southern Child, and it definitely plays to his Southern upbringing and his religious upbringing. So I think that's all really fascinating to learn about and important to hear before you listen to this album, because it will definitely put into context some of these songs. Now, this Little Richard album was supposed to be released in 1972, and nothing ever came of it. So now, in 2020, it is finally being released in its full glory, exactly as Little Richard intended, even down to the cover art, exactly how he wanted it, which is really fantastic. And I have to say, this is a very interesting listen. It's different than any other Little Richard you will ever hear. If you heard this on the radio or in a store, you would not immediately go, oh yeah, that's Little Richard. It's just so different, and that really is because of his whole history and his life story. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Little Richard, and then we'll go further into the specifics of the album. Now, Little Richard was born in 1932. He was the third of 12 children. His dad was very, very strict. He had a hard upbringing, and he was kicked out of the house at age 13. He went to live with some family, and he had members of family who were pastors, so he ended up in the church a lot as a kid, which did later on influence him in life. Now, in 1951, he was signed to RCA. He played his first piano gig in a nightclub and was picked up, and he still wasn't hot yet, so he was working in the bus station in Macon, Georgia, where he grew up, washing dishes. And as he was washing dishes, he wrote the song Tutti Frutti, and it really became a big hit. It ended up topping 10 on the chart, so it was huge and really helped him grow his rock and roll career. Now, if you listen to the lyrics of Tutti Frutti, it is not the same lyrics that were originally written, so I highly recommend you going online and searching original Tutti Frutti lyrics, because you will be really shocked at those lyrics. They were definitely something that wouldn't have been allowed to be played on the radio in the 50s. Very, very risque, and still sort of risque at today's standards. So go listen to, we can't listen to it, but go read those lyrics online. I think you'll find it really interesting. Now, in the height of his career in 1956, he wrote Tutti Frutti. He came out later with Long Tall Sally and Good Golly Miss Molly, and really became a big integral player in the history of rock and roll. Even the Beatles were influenced by him. He has some fantastic music. Now, after the height of his career, he really went through a period where he struggled with his sexuality, and he struggled with rock and roll in general. And he kind of fell off the map for a while. He went into seminary to study to be a pastor, and he did some gospel music, but he definitely had a whole issue with the whole rock and roll scene and rock and roll music in general, and his sexuality, being that he had a very strong Christian upbringing, and he just never could come to terms with it all. And you see a lot of that in this album. You can hear, in a sense, the struggle between his rock and roll roots and going back to his country roots, his Christian upbringing, his whole Macon, Georgia experience. And it's just really, really interesting when you listen to this album, and it's fun to know a little bit more about Little Richard, and you can read gobs online about him. Unfortunately, he did pass away this year, I believe of skin cancer, So it was really a tough year to lose one of the rock and roll greats. So a little bit about this album. As I mentioned, there were only 1,800 copies released, give or take, in the US. This was a harder one to find. Our record store, I think, only got one, so I was really glad to get this from Jack at Jack's Trax Records. It has a really cool cover. I have to say, the cover is neat. It has that checkerboard 1950s look, kind of diner-esque, and then you've got the real southern roots coming out. So you got Chuck Berry. That was the other record I picked up. This is Little Richard. You got Little Richard milking a cow, and then you have that really cool kind of southern font on the top with the kind of branches, bamboo style, and I just think that's really kind of neat. So I like the look of this album. The album cover, the jacket itself, is not as thick as I would like it to be, but that's not a big deal. It's still just such a neat graphic, I think, and it really stands out. So kudos to them on the design of this. I think is great. Of course, you got your tracks on the back like normal, side 1, side 2. Mentions that it was produced for release by Cheryl Pulowski. I'm sure I'm not saying her name correctly. Originally intended for release in 1972. Original album produced by R.A. Bumps Blackwell, which we all know was his big producer. And this came out on Omnivore Records for 2020. Now, this was a first release, so that means there probably will be a second release of this at some point. It was not an RSD Day exclusive, and it did not have the hype sticker on the cover like normal, so I thought that was interesting. This record is also not numbered on the back. Typical RS Day releases have come out with numbers in the past, so you know exactly what number out of so many you're getting, but this record here does not have it like the others, which is not a big deal. It's just something I was noticing for this year, and I think other people had pointed it out too for Record Store Day. And there probably will be a press of this in the future because this was the first go-round. So this is the first true press of this album. You got the fun purple insert with the vinyl inside, the great inner sleeve here. Really nice quality, thick inner sleeve. Of course, I change all of my inner sleeves to the high fidelity inner sleeves to prevent static. And I do find that this record was really staticky when I pulled it out of the sleeve, put it on my turntable. Boy, there was a static to the max, so I used my anti-static zero res, not zero res, that's the stylus cleaner, zero dust, what is that called? Anti-static. Anyway, you guys in the vinyl community know what I'm talking about. I'll put it in the notes, but the anti-static gun, Multi-Stat, I think is what it is, and it worked wonders, so that fixed that problem. Really, really cool graphics. Again, I love how they did the cover with that red and the yellow, and then you pull out the vinyl, and it is this like incredible, awesome yellow color. And I just think that this whole album coordinates really well together. Look at that. That is just well thought out, in my opinion. I think it's really cool. On the back of the inner sleeve, which I forgot to mention, you've got a whole bunch of liner notes there. This is really great to read. I can't read it all on camera because we'd be here 5 million years. But this is a great history of this album and Little Richard in general, so highly recommend reading that. This is the Great Lost Little Richard album, and definitely his breakthrough of country rock. So that is great if you want to read while you're listening, because I do that a lot. I read and listen at the same time. Now, this video took me a little while to do because I wanted to listen to this many times before I shared it with you, because this album is so different. I am having the hardest time explaining this to you on camera. This is one of those albums that's just so unique, you're going to have to go listen to for yourself. And I highly recommend that somebody in the vinyl community or anyone that wants to hear Little Richard Lost album, go pick this up, because it is very, very different. And it definitely gives you a little bit of an insight into Little Richard's world. And I think this is definitely worth the pickup, definitely fun to listen to, and definitely very, very different. Now, I'll talk a little bit about the mixing and mastering and all that later. So let's go over the songs that are on this album. So we have side 1, California, I'm Coming. If you pick her too hard, she comes out of tune. Burning Up with Love, Ain't No Tellin', Last Year's Racehorse, Can't Run in This Race Yard, Side 2, Southern Child, In the Name, Over Yonder, I Get a Little Lonely, and Puppy Dog Song. Now, I felt when I was listening to this that the songs were a little bit out of order. I didn't feel like they worked well in the order that they were recorded for this album. I felt like some of the songs could have been moved around. Southern Child is on side 2, and that is something I felt like should have been the opener to the album itself. It should have been the title track on side 1. That is just my personal opinion. It's punchy, it's different, it's fun, and it definitely should be, I think, the first song to be heard on this album, in my opinion. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, when I get to side 2, where I felt like things could have been moved around just a little bit. Now, let's talk about side 1, some of the songs on side 1. I've got my notes right here, so I don't forget. Now, this has a very, very heavily influenced Southern rock vibe. Very, very country. But you do get a little bit of influence of gospel and soul in this. Definitely speaks to his Christian upbringing and influences. So California, I'm Coming is a great song. If You Pick Her Too Hard, awesome. And track number 3 is my favorite on the entire album. It's Burning Up with Love. It is really a great song. You definitely get more of that classic Little Richard in this song than you do any of the other songs on the track. It definitely speaks more to the lyrics and the style of Little Richard that you're used to hearing from the 50s. So I really enjoyed that. You get a lot of banjo featured on this, and I like that. It's definitely different, but it adds to kind of that Southern rock vibe and plays well, I think, with that. Last Year's Horse Race is there on this side. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about, what was the song here I had listed? Yes, Last Year's Horse Race, the one I had just mentioned, the last track. That is where you get, I think, the most traditional country sound out of this whole album. Little Richard definitely comes through, and you get a lot of his flair and flavor, but you still have a lot of that country twang, and you get a lot of that on track 4. So that's side 1. I thought all the songs were really good. Love side 1. I don't really have any complaints. Now, side 2, this is where I feel like things needed to be arranged a little bit differently, and the mixing and mastering just wasn't the best. So you have Southern Child, which I think is a phenomenal song, should have been on side 1, in my opinion, should have been the first hitter right off the bat. It's a great song. Now, In the Name, this is the song that I found very interesting. It is very heavily influenced with, in my opinion, you definitely get a lot of that hymn kind of gospel style. It is a unique song to listen to. It definitely should not have been sandwiched in between Southern Child and Over Yonder. They're 2 different songs altogether, in my opinion, and they shouldn't have been put together. Oh, I said In the Name. I'm sorry, folks. I just got that mixed up with Over Yonder. What I was saying is that Over Yonder is the heavily influenced gospel song. And it should not, in my opinion, have gotten in the middle of In the Name and I Got a Little Lonely. I just feel like those 2 songs don't really belong next to each other. Because Southern Child, you've got this awesome, great opener, definitely very Southern rock, very fun to listen to. It definitely kind of gives you the whole tone for the album. Then you have In the Name. This is version 3, which is good. And then you have Over Yonder. And Over Yonder, I felt like just needed to be on side 2. This is where I felt like things could have been arranged a little bit better, in my opinion. That's more of a side 2, like track 4. In my opinion, and I would have moved around a few things because I just don't think that it fits sandwiched in between those 2. It's sort of hard going from something that's a little bit more rocky, a little bit more edgy, then all of a sudden to like this gospel song. It just doesn't, in my opinion, fit. Now you have I Get a Little Lonely and the Puppy Dog song. Now I wanted to talk a little bit about a little let's see, In the Name. That's the song that I was getting mixed up with Over Yonder, because that's the more gospel-y influenced song. Now, In the Name is a song that I felt was very good, but I was disappointed because I could not hear Little Richard at all. I felt like the banjos and the drums, all the instrumentals drowned him out completely, and it was a shame because I really wanted to hear what he was saying and singing, and you just couldn't hear it very well. So that's where I feel like the mixing and mastering on this album fell short a little bit. Also, I felt like in general, this album was a little bit hot listening to it. It was edgy, but not in the right kind of edgy way that you're used to. So I just felt like things could have been done a little bit better personally there. Also, we're on side 2 now, and I'm talking about the last track on this album. I believe it's the last track, second to last track, I Get a Little Bit Lonely. This song was fantastic, and I was enjoying listening to it, and then all of a sudden it just cuts off. Just cuts off, no nice fade into the next song. It just cuts off, and there's a huge gap of silence. And then all of a sudden the Puppy Dog song comes on, and I'm like, whoa, what happened? Because all the rest of the songs are done really well. You get a nice lead in into all of the other songs on this track on side 2, and then you just have that one. I don't know what happened, but clearly the mixing and mastering on this, I feel like honestly did fall a little bit short. They could have done a little bit better, in my opinion. Now, the Puppy Dog song is kind of fun, and this is where you get a lot of Little Richard flavor, I feel. You get tons of mooing and barking, and you can hear the farm animals. You really feel like you are on the farm with Little Richard, and I think that's fun. And even Louie, my dog, started going bananas in the middle of the song. All these dogs started barking, and Louie just was just at the record player going crazy. So I thought that was really funny. And I'm sure every time I listen to it, she will go nuts. But it's just a fun song, and it really does add to the flair of this album. So I feel like this album is good. It's just different, and it's not something you're used to hearing from Little Richard. Do I think, again, like I said, it's worth picking up? Yes, I do, because it's the lost album from Little Richard, and it's just such a unique and different album, and so cool to experience. Do I feel like the mixing and mastering could have been done a lot better? Yes, I feel like that was a little bit of an afterthought. The packaging was super cool. They coordinated everything. They gave you this awesome history on the record itself, and then the record was just sort of there, you know, and I feel like they could have done a bit of a better job. Is this something that I'm going to listen to every day? No, it's not the typical Little Richard style that I'm used to and that I prefer. It's something that I definitely will be listening to more in the future when I'm in a mood for it. It's not one that's going to be like an everyday, oh, I can't wait to hear that song again. If I never heard this album, I probably would be okay, to be honest. It's very strange. There are some tracks like the Puppy Dog song that if you're just listening to it, it's kind of chaotic. But it also gives you a lot of that southern flavor and makes you feel like you're on the farm. So it's just different, and it's one I think everybody needs to experience for themselves. Again, with music and with sound design and art and all of this, it's very subjective. You know, it is up to the person creating it and what they think and feel in that moment. And if someone else is listening to the art and experiencing it, they have their own opinion. So you guys might pick this up and feel like the mixing and mastering is awesome. Personally, I just didn't feel like it was there. And that is my personal opinion. So that's the great thing about art, is everybody can listen to it and experience something different. And this is definitely an art piece. It's definitely fun to pick up for a couple of dollars, and really worth having in your collection just because it is so unique. So I hope you guys got a little bit more of an insight into the Little Richard Southern Child. I enjoyed doing this and listening to this record. It was so fun to actually own on vinyl, and I'm glad that I got something that most people probably don't have in their collections. And fun to get a real, true background into Little Richard, because when you hear this album, like I mentioned before, when you hear Over Yonder, which is a very gospel-y song, and then you hear some of this kind of southern rock influence, I feel like you get a lot of that kind of struggle between, you know, am I rock and roll? Am I country? Am I going back to my roots? What am I doing? And you know, all of that coming out, and I feel like you get this in this album, so it's really, really worth a listen. So guys, that's it for me today. Again, I hope you enjoyed hearing about Little Richard, Southern Child. I enjoyed sharing it with you all, and I hope you guys are spinning some awesome vinyl. Let me know what you got down below for Record Store Day Black Friday, or any of your 2020 Record Store Day drops. Looking to see what 2021 brings. I bet there's going to be some fabulous vinyl to pick up. Guys, go, of course, support your local record stores, because they need our support now more than ever. And there's so many people that you can buy from online if you don't have a record store nearby you. Record Crate Adam here on YouTube does record sales every week live on YouTube, so you can participate in one of those. If you're looking for something, you can always email Adam at Record Crate, and he'll get back with you, and you can buy from him virtually. So even if you can't go into a store, or you're not near a record store, you can still shop your local record stores online. So please go support all of them that you can. I hope you guys spend some fabulous vinyl, and I will talk to you soon in another video. As always, stay in, stay safe, and binge YouTube. Bye-bye now.